thank you all for coming to the second of our 4-part speaker series celebrating the 40th anniversary of Shoreline at Mountain View opening to the public. I'd like to provide a few thank yous first. First, we want to thank Michaels for hosting us. We also want to thank KNVT for recording and helping us put together this educational series. I want to thank our Shoreline staff, specifically Christina, who spearheaded this whole speaker series for us. Our presenter, Phil, who I will speak to more in a minute. And then always we want to thank our leadership in Mountain View. We have Councilmember Matichak here. Our city council has, one of the things you'll hear recurring through the speaker series is the foresight that a lot of our community leaders, city leaders have had in their thoughts and what they've done with Shoreline, everything from the landfill, the infrastructure, having a full-time biologist on staff. There's been a lot of really, really smart forethought put into making Shoreline be as great as it is today. And so we're very thankful for the council members, for the community leaders. I know we have representatives from different community groups out in Mountain View, and so thank you all for being here today. So Shoreline at Mountain View was officially opened to the public on July 17th, 1983. So we're in our 40th anniversary. It's a 750-acre wildlife preserve and recreation area that is built over critical infrastructure. The first speaker, Ray Rodriguez, provided a presentation on the past of Shoreline and covered a lot of the infrastructure upon which Shoreline is built. Today, Phil will be providing a presentation on the present Shoreline. It's a wildlife preserve and provide critical habitat, a wildlife preserve that provides critical habitat and for protected species. We'll also have the Wildlife Education and Rehabilitation Center here with live rescued animals, so that'll be a cool part of this. And then our next speaker is Raymond Wong, who will be talking about the future of Shoreline on August 27th in regards to sea level rise. And then we will culminate our 4-part series of the past, present, and future of Shoreline in October, on October 15th, with a panel discussion that will have past, current staff. We'll also have some members from community organizations there that'll kind of be able to put the whole thing together for us at the very end. So it'll be really cool. And so we're excited for all these opportunities. We're excited to be able to take some of the great knowledge we have, institutional knowledge from our different staff and presenters, and be able to record it and have it available to you guys, but also just for historical knowledge for us, because I'm fortunate I get to interact with all these speakers every day, so I get to pick their brain all the time, and it's important that we get to share that with the community as well. And so with that, I'll be introducing Phil. So Philip Higgins is our Wildlife Preservation Coordinator, City Biologist, and Burrowing Owl Specialist. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies with a minor in Biological Science focusing on environmental impact analysis, like the NEPA and CEQA processes. Phil also has his Master's of Science in Environmental Studies, focusing on wildlife conservation, where his thesis focused on the prey base of western burrowing owls. I'm going to be reading a lot because there's a lot here for Phil. Phil has spent the last 23 years conducting research and pursuing conservation recovery efforts on burrowing owls and other species, such as black skimmers, Congdon tar plant, golden eagles, harbor seals, white-faced capuchin monkeys, whitetail kites, and monarch butterflies. And so perhaps most recognizable to the city of Mountain View, Phil has spent much of that 23 years studying, monitoring, and helping burrowing owls. Through that, he has been involved in the captive breeding program, a banding and monitoring project, juvenile overwintering and rewilding project, and then a bunch of habitat management efforts throughout Santa Clara County. Through this work, Phil has written numerous articles, he's been published in scientific journals, and he also serves as a part-time lecturer at local colleges and universities. Phil has been working with the city of Mountain View as part-time or full-time since 2005, and I can personally attest that his historical knowledge and knowledge of the wildlife and habitat for us has been invaluable to the city. We're very fortunate that we have someone like Phil that helps us keep Shoreline moving forward, but also keeping all the wildlife and habitat safe, protected, and in a good standing. And so it's a delicate balance out here, and we couldn't do it without Phil. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to him and get to the meat and potatoes of today. So thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, good morning, everybody. So those white-faced capuchin monkeys was in Costa Rica, not here at Shoreline, just to be clear. So I'm just going to talk about some of the species that we have here at Shoreline. So Brady mentioned that we're on top of a closed landfill, and there are a lot of issues related to that. One is methane leakage, and also is leachate. So we have an entire team of technicians who monitor that methane gas. But despite the fact that we are located on top of a closed landfill, we have over 30 protected species here at Shoreline, and many other species. So I'm just going to go over just a tiny fragment of some of those species. So we're very fortunate here in California. We're one of 34 biodiversity hotspots on the planet because of the number of species out here. So we have approximately 6,000 California native plants, about 1/3 of which are endemic. They're found nowhere else in the world except here in California. And of the 1,000 vertebrate species, about 65 are endemic to California, such as tule elk. And for those plants, we have a rare imperiled plant here called Congdon's tar plant, which I'll talk about a little later. We also have the tallest tree in the world, giant redwoods. We have the largest tree in the world, giant sequoias, and one of the oldest living trees in the world, knobcone pine. And one other species which we have, which is very unusual here in Shoreline, is the pygmy blue butterfly. So it's supposedly one of the smallest butterflies in the world. So around July, August, you can actually see them here at Shoreline. They live along the edge of the bay. So why is there so much biodiversity here in California? A lot of that is to do with geographical isolation. So when these species got to California originally, some of them, not all of them, they're geographically isolated. We have the Sierra Nevada over here, Pacific Ocean down here, deserts down here, and up north we have rainforests, not tropical rainforests, but some of these species evolved into unique species. Then along with our microclimates, think about it, San Francisco is not too far away, yet their temperatures and their rainfall patterns are completely different to our weather conditions over here. We have a lot of various soil types, like serpentine soil. So all these unique features have given us a diversity of plants, which has helped with our diversity of animal species. And then San Francisco Bay. Some of you may have driven on a freeway to get here today to Shoreline. Well, birds fly on flyways, and we have 4 flyways in North America. So we're located on the Pacific Flyway. So every year in spring and fall, millions of birds are migrating from South and Central America up to the Arctic and Canada. So they actually stop off here. Some of you may have stopped off and refueled at a gasoline station today. A lot of those birds refueled here in San Francisco Bay. So historically, people didn't think too kindly of San Francisco Bay. We've done a lot of damage. I think it's about 80 to 90% of the bay has been destroyed with infill, draining. Think of Foster City. And then unfortunately, we put all these landfills right at the edge of the bay. We have Palo Alto, Mountain View, Moffett Field, Alviso, Hayward, all these landfills, which we didn't understand the importance of San Francisco Bay. It's a great breeding location for fish. It provides a lot of nutrients, control of climate, purification of water, and also air production. So we have up to 1 million water birds are migrating through this small little area every year. It's actually the largest wetland on the west coast of the United States. But technically, it's actually an estuary, not a bay. And then Shoreline Park. Despite the fact we're only 750 acres and we are on top of a closed landfill, we do have a lot of diversity out here. So 2 very unusual species we have is the salt marsh harvest mouse, this little guy here, and ridgeways rail. Both of them are only endemic to San Francisco Bay. So if you're an endemic species and you live in a very restricted area, if anything happens to that area, you're very prone to decrease in numbers. So because we've destroyed a lot of the bay, both these species are listed as endangered, and both of them are here at Shoreline. We have white pelicans, northern harriers, and also this guy over here, whitetail kites, which we have breeding. We've had breeding a couple of times here at Shoreline. So according to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the state of California has more diversity than any other state in the United States. And San Francisco Bay, there's about 97 special status wildlife species just in this small little area, which really emphasizes the importance of San Francisco Bay. And here at Shoreline, we have 30 protected species, bird species, 3 mammal species, 1 reptile, and 1 plant species. These are only protected species. We have a huge amount of species beyond these individuals. So why do we have so much diversity here at Shoreline? Well, if you look at our location, right at the edge of the bay, we have the diversity of ecosystems. So within Shoreline, we have the irrigated grasslands on the golf course, a freshwater reservoir. We have all these non-irrigated grasslands. We have two creeks, Stevens Creek, Permanente Creek. We have tidal mudflats. So the diversity of ecosystems increases the diversity of species found at this area. So one area, up the top here, we have Charleston Slough. So that's a restoration project. As part of our mitigation for that restoration, we're required to do 4 bird surveys per year, one at low tide, one at high tide, 4 times per year in spring and fall, when birds are migrating through. And we've observed, just in one survey, over 27,000 individual birds, representing 43 different species. So if you're ever into birding, especially at low tide in spring and fall, it's a great location to see a lot of these waterfowl and shorebirds. Down here, on Shorebird Way, we have the largest egret rookery in the South San Francisco Bay. We have over 100 nests of great egrets, snowy egrets, and black-ground night herons. It's a very urban area if you've ever been down there. And every year, we close the road down during the nesting season to protect a lot of those birds. I was there last week, and it's a strange year this year. Normally, the black-crowned night herons come in first, followed by the egrets. This year, all 3 species are there together. And there are only 4 breeding burrowing owl locations left in Santa Clara County. We're actually one of those breeding locations. More common species out here. So we're going to start with gray fox, our native fox. These are actually quite small individuals, not much bigger than a cat. They're very unusual because they're the best climbing canine in the world. And they're opportunistic and generalists when it comes to their diet. They eat a lot of berries, a lot of fruit, eggs, and also rodents. Very docile, very shy animals. I've actually seen a jackrabbit chase these guys away. They're actually that small. But they're great at climbing trees. So 2 other species we have is jackrabbits and brush rabbits. So jackrabbits, they have a great adaptation for survival in very, very hot areas. They have very, very large ears. So during the daytime, they actually huddle down in the ground and fold their ears back to camouflage them in. Although they have good hearing, the ears are very good for dissipating heat. You can actually see very little fur on the ears, and those veins dissipate the heat. Like elephants, you often see elephants waving their ears. They're not listening, they're actually dissipating heat. So 2 species which are very prominent out here. California ground squirrels, these are known as a keystone species. So if you think of the old Roman archways, the main stone over the archway is known as a keystone. If you remove that keystone, the archway will collapse. So ground squirrels play such a pivotal role in the environment. They're also known as keystone species. So all that burrowing that they do aerates the soil. They bring in bedding material, which decomposes, adds nutrients to the ground. We've seen a lot of other species living in the same burrows with the ground squirrels. Rodents, reptiles, amphibians, invertebrates. And also many species, including protected species, are dependent on those ground squirrel burrows for survival. One is burrowing owls, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and also tiger salamanders. And then a lot of species eat them. Badgers, foxes, hawks, eagles. So very important species because of the pivotal role they play in the environment. These 2 guys are very well adapted to urban environments. Skunks and raccoons, their populations are doing very, very well because they're able to cohabituate with people. The interesting thing about raccoons, not all of them, but most of them, when they have food, they bring it to water. Their fingers are actually very dexterous like ours, and they actually clean the food items before they actually eat them. So birds of prey. Golden eagles. There's actually a golden eagle nest in Alviso, in a palm tree. And these birds, they're the individuals that forage here at Shoreline, at least we believe, because their range is about 50 square miles. So that golden eagle nest in Alviso is the first golden eagle nest in the valley floor of Santa Clara in 128 years. It's also the first golden eagle nest that we know of in a palm tree. Typically they nest on cliffs or very, very large trees. We also have a bald eagle nest in Milpitas, and they actually, last 5 years, they've been very common here at Shoreline. Some other species I have bred out here is northern harriers, red-tailed hawks, and also American kestrels. So work today is actually going to bring in a red-tailed hawk and an American kestrel, a burrowing owl, and a turkey vulture for you to see. So I mentioned those whitetail kites. If you ever get an opportunity, go onto Google and look at some other photographs of whitetail kites. Their eyes are actually red, so they're a state fully protected species. So they've been breeding out in this area for many years, and 3 of those years they bred here at Shoreline Park. So they have a very unusual behavior when it comes to feeding the adults and also feeding the young. They do an exchange of food mid-air. So here we have an adult and feeding a juvenile here at Shoreline. This little guy, I don't know how it got its name, Killdeer, because they're only about that size. I don't think they could do any harm to a deer at all. But the reason I'm showing these birds is they're ground nesting birds, and they nest in gravelly areas. Unfortunately, it's usually the edges of trails or in sandy areas. So one big problem is it's very difficult to see the eggs. So, I mean, this picture is enlarged, but you can see the eggs. They're very, very well camouflaged with the soil. And you can see a little Killdeer chicken here. But they have a very unusual behavior. Because they're nesting birds, they're very prone to predation by any animal that comes along. So if a predator comes along, the adult will fly over towards the predator. It'll drag its wing along the ground and make a squawking noise. It's pretending that it's injured. Because remember, predators are going to go after the sick, the old, or the injured. So they think this bird here, making this squawking noise, is an easy item to kill. They'll head over towards the adult, it'll fly away, and hopefully you won't be able to find the eggs and the chicks. So we often have problems when we're trying to find the eggs. We can hear the adult, we can see the adult dragging the wing. We have to walk up and down about 10 to 20 times before we actually find the nest. They're really well camouflaged. And when they hatch, they can walk within a few hours. So they'll actually leave the nest alone. So some other birds. I mentioned endemic species. Here's another endemic species that's found here at Shoreline, the San Francisco common yellowthroat. This is the male, a very vibrant color. So we have them nesting out in the Shoreline pond here. We have them along the creeks. Very vividly colored bird. Orioles, we have 2 species out here. These are migratory birds, hooded orioles and Bullock's orioles. Very vibrant coloration. And this one, I like this bird. This is the male ruddy duck. So it has a very unique, distinctive blue beak, but only during the breeding season. Outside of the breeding season, that blue coloration disappears. And a couple of years ago, we had a big sensation with this bird at the top left-hand corner, a red bishop. They're not native to California. They're actually from sub-Saharan Africa. They're related to weaver birds. So when the pair came out here, we had loads of photographers and birders trying to get a photograph of them. They attempted nesting for 2 years, but then they moved on. So it could be an escapee from another breeding facility or a pet. We don't know for sure. So invertebrates, not everybody's favorite species in general, but these are very, very important to the ecosystem. After plants, invertebrates are very, very important for the role that they play in the environment. For food, many birds eat them, even hummingbirds. I mean, most people associate hummingbirds with flowers. The nectar that they get from the flowers is not a high protein source. They don't feed nectar to their young. They actually feed insects to the young. So insects are very, very important, especially butterflies. People love to have butterflies in their gardens, but they don't necessarily want caterpillars because they're eating their plants. But if you don't have caterpillars, you're not going to have butterflies. So there's that small little pygmy blue butterfly, the smallest one in the world. We're doing a big program at Shoreline at the moment to increase bees and butterfly populations because they are declining around the world. About 75% of all the food you eat is pollinated by bees in general. Insecticides, loss of habitat, a lot of issues are causing their decline. So it really is important to plant native plants to benefit a lot of these species. We have praying mantises out here, and one very unusual species is a tarantula hawk wasp. So it's a nectar eater, but then again, nectar doesn't have a high source of protein. So when it comes to the breeding season, the female tarantula hawk finds a big spider, usually a tarantula. She paralyzes it with her sting, drags it into a burrow. So remember, the spider is still alive at this time, it's just paralyzed. Then she lays her egg into the abdomen of the spider. So when the baby hatches, it has a fresh piece of meat to eat for a while. It doesn't eat the brains or the heart, it leaves them till the end, eats the rest of the body first. But insects, invertebrates in general are very, very interesting and are very, very important to the ecosystem. So the flora, the plants out here, we don't originally have a lot of natives out here because we are on top of a closed landfill. But these 4 species are native to this area that we didn't plant. We are doing a big program out here at Shoreline thanks to City Council and their priority of biodiversity. We're planting a lot of natives out here, but these 4 species here are native on their own. Up the top left-hand corner is Congdon's tar plant. It's listed as a rare imperiled plant. Originally, it was only found in 9 counties in the Bay Area. It's extirpated or locally extinct from 3 of those counties already. So we have a big program here at Shoreline to save this plant. We've made some mitigation areas. We've hired companies to propagate the seed. We've planted some seeds ourselves. So the population has gone from a few hundred up to a few thousand, just in the space of a couple of years. And some other natives, in springtime, you'll see fiddleneck, hayfield tarweed, although I haven't seen any this year, and salt heliotrope. This is a great plant for attracting butterflies and bees. Reptiles. We just had a conversation earlier on today. We don't have a lot of snakes out here. The only 2 species we've ever seen is gopher snakes and garter snakes. Another species that people in general don't appreciate, but the role they play in pest control is very, very important, especially with the gopher snakes. Western pond turtle, listed as a species of special concern. We have at least 1 of them out here. And western fence lizards. I was reading a study there recently about western fence lizards. So they're often called blue belly lizards, and people often see them pushing, like doing push-ups. They're not trying to, they are impressing the ladies, not with their muscles, but they're trying to expose the blue coloration. But you've probably heard of Lyme disease. Lyme disease can do a lot of impact to people spread by ticks. So some studies are showing that ticks that live off the blood of western fence lizards are less likely to spread Lyme disease. So again, the importance of biodiversity, why we should have all these different species out here. And just in general, these ecosystems are very complex. We don't understand a lot of the interactions among all these species, especially when it comes to microinvertebrates in the ground. There's a lot of species there that we don't know what role they're playing, but really is important to save biodiversity. So speaking of saving biodiversity, I'm going to go through some of the projects that we're implementing here at Shoreline. So one of the ones I've been very involved with is the western burrowing owl. So there are approximately 140 different species of owls in the world, and burrowing owls are unique for several reasons. One of them is it's the only owl in the world that lives in a burrow in the ground. But despite the fact that the burrow plays a pivotal role, the owl doesn't dig the burrow in general. Usually it's fossorial mammals, such as California ground squirrels in this area and prairie dogs in other parts of its range. So the western burrowing owl is only found west of the Mississippi River into southern Canada and northern Mexico. There's also a Florida burrowing owl. They're the only 2 species in North America. There's up to 16, maybe 18 subspecies throughout the Americas, all the way down to Tierra del Fuego in Chile. Another unique species about burrowing owls is the babies can mimic the sound of a rattlesnake. If you actually approach the burrow where the babies are, they'll mimic the sound of a rattlesnake to scare off predators. They'll bring, during the breeding season, some individuals, not all of them, will bring decoration to the burrow entrance. I've found like natural things like animal poop, and it's believed they bring cow dung or even horse manure over to the burrow to attract insects, which they eat. Another thing is maybe the smell of dung discourages predators from digging up the burrows. So badgers and foxes and coyotes can dig up the burrows. So maybe if they smell, but the main reason they think they bring the decoration over is so one male tells another male that this burrow is occupied. So they bring a lot of natural things over, sticks, grass, animal poop, but also a lot of human items as well. Unfortunately, during COVID, I found face masks. I found sandwiches, cigarette butts, bits of plastic, bits of clothing. And I remember there was a pair of burrowing owls at Mission College who had 3 pairs of women's tights at the burrow entrance. Where they got them from and what they were doing with them, I don't really know. I hate to think what they were doing. But they're only about 9 inches tall and weigh about 1/4 pound. They're both diurnal and nocturnal. So during the daytime, they just sit at the burrow entrance looking for predators. If the vegetation grows taller than them, remember they're only 9 inches tall, they'll actually abandon the burrow unless they have chicks present. So we do a lot of management out here for the burrowing owls to keep the vegetation short. So a lot of people ask, well, how did they survive before people came along? Most of the grasses in this area are non-native grasses. There are a lot of annuals originally from Europe. They grow very, very tall, produce a lot of seeds. They've outcompeted our native grasses, which in general were bunch grasses and much smaller. So a lot of habitat enhancement. And actually, Shoreline is one of the biggest populations. We've gone from one of the smallest populations to one of the biggest populations solely because of habitat management. So in the 1980s, there was about 500 burrowing owls at 250 locations in Santa Clara County. During the 2022 breeding season, we've gone from 500 burrowing owls down to 33 in the entire county, and we've gone from 250 locations down to just 4 locations. So those 4 locations are Shoreline, Moffett Airfield, San Jose International Airport, and Alviso. The problem with San Jose Airport and Moffett Airfield, the FAA does not want birds in general at airports because of potential collisions with aircraft. Both of those sites historically had between 60 and 80 burrowing owls. This year, San Jose Airport is reporting no burrowing owls for the first time ever, and Moffett Airfield only has 2 males, so they're not going to produce chicks this year at all. So loss of habitat is a big problem. Especially with the price of grasslands nowadays. It's prime land to be turned into development or even agricultural use. Predators, especially in urban areas. Remember, all these owls are found in highly urban areas. Cats, dogs, skunks, snakes, hawks, eagles, all prey on them. Loss of fossorial mammals. So despite the fact that California ground squirrels are considered a keystone species, they're also considered a pest species because of the burrowing that they do. So some organizations eradicate them. If you eradicate the ground squirrels, burrowing owls are also going to decline. Low quality prey. A lot of these urban areas, if you look at Google Maps, there's very few grasslands left in Santa Clara County. So we're forcing all of these other species, the golden eagles, the bald eagles, all these hawks, foxes, badgers, all to compete against each other in fewer and smaller areas. So burrowing owls only hunt one prey item at a time, and they can have up to 12 babies. So I actually done my thesis on the prey base of burrowing owls, and the #1 species that they're capturing in Santa Clara County is earwigs. An earwig is that size. If you have 10 babies to feed and you're bringing back earwigs to feed your babies, most of them are going to die off, unfortunately. Inbreeding, I'm going to show you a slide. They only live between 3 and 5 years. So whoever's there, and they breed 1 year after birth. So whoever's there, whether it's your sibling or your parents, you breed with them. And with these small populations of just 3, 4, 5, or 6 birds, inbreeding is a big problem. And then disturbance is also a big issue. I've seen it with photographers. I mean, the intent is not to disturb the birds. And often when you speak to photographers, I just want to take one photograph. Yes, but you're just one of 10 people on that day who's going to disturb them, which can cause a big problem. So I mentioned inbreeding. So here's 3 burrowing owl chicks that were born in 2022, okay? This is their paternal genetic line, and this is their maternal genetic line, okay? So this female here, they're the same female, and this male is the same female. They had young. They got together, so that means these are cousins over here. Then over here, this female had 1 male offspring. She got together with her male offspring the following year. So you have inbreeding, and then those 2 individuals are over on both sides of the population. So inbreeding is a big issue, which can lead to a lot of problems. Loss of genetic variability, and also low reproductive success. So what are we doing here at Shoreline? So Brady mentioned that the City Council in Mountain View is very, very active when it comes to biodiversity and increasing biodiversity, not just here at Shoreline Park, but actually throughout the city. So the city is actually working on a biodiversity plan for the entire city, but we have 2 major plans here at Shoreline. One is our Burrowing Owl Preservation Plan. So to reduce the population and actually start increasing the population of burrowing owls, City of Mountain View created a Burrowing Owl Preservation Plan. So there's 3 population goals for the burrowing owls and 3 habitat goals. The 3 population goals is to get at least 10 pairs of breeding owls. We think based on the amount of habitat we have out here, we should be able to support 10 pairs of burrowing owls. Goal number 2 is to have 75% of the pairs produce young. And goal number 3 is for each pair to have at least 3 young. So you're replacing the adults and having an increase of 1 individual. 3 habitat goals is to manage as much of shoreline for burrowing owls, short vegetation, longer vegetation for prey species. Habitat goal number 2 is to have a healthy ground squirrel population throughout the park. Remember, more ground squirrels don't just provide the burrows. Some of the prey items that the owls eat are also found in the ground squirrel burrows. And a very interesting study was done by one of my students at Moffett Airfield. Lisa Henderson, she put cameras down at the burrowing owl burrows to determine if ground squirrels or burrowing owls who share the same predators, which individual or which species observes the predator first. And actually the ground squirrels in general observed the predator. They gave a warning call, which the burrowing owls also recognize and go underground. And then the last part of the habitat goals was to create a burrowing owl preserve. So these areas in red are burrowing owl preserves. It doesn't mean that all the owls are found in those areas. It means they're areas that we're specifically enhancing to increase the burrowing owl population. So some conservation things that we're doing. So I mentioned that burrowing owls live in ground squirrel burrows. They'll also live in artificial burrows, and we've been very, very successful with them. For the past 5 or 6 years, about 90% of all the breeding success has occurred in artificial burrows. This photograph up here shows an example of an artificial burrow. So we're using flex drain pipe, and that's about 6 to 10 feet long. At the end of that is an irrigation valve box. So these have been very, very beneficial because sometimes when a vehicle or a tractor drives over the ground, it can cause the collapse of a ground squirrel burrow. These are more robust. Another important conservation issue with the artificial burrows is we've seen the native red fox dig up burrows here at Shoreline, ground squirrel burrows. They're not able to get into the artificial burrows, at least not yet, touch wood. They will dig up along the pipes, but they can't actually get inside the pipe. So we've been very successful with them. I mentioned about the prey items. So we need to have short vegetation for burrowing owls, less than 2 to 4 inches tall. But that's very good for the breeding burrowing owls. It's not good for their prey. So their prey includes invertebrates such as earwigs, grasshoppers, crickets, and beetles, and then rodents such as gophers and mice and voles. But they prefer the taller vegetation. So what we do, in some of the areas, we're planting native plants, low-growing native plants that provide cover for the rodents. I see some of the volunteers are here today, which I really appreciate. We wouldn't get most of these projects done if it wasn't for volunteers. We have a very active volunteer group from Mountain View that helps us with the planting of these natives. And this year they actually planted their own milkweeds, which thank you very much for doing that. So these plants not only provide cover, they also provide nectar, seeds, and berries for those rodents. So we have some prime nesting areas, and they're surrounded by these native plants to increase the prey base. Then we're doing some more active conservation work. So over here, we capture the owls every year, and we put bands on them. That's how we learned about the inbreeding. So from the banding, we've learned how long they live, which individuals are pairing up. We can see their movements from one location to another location. And then to overcome the inbreeding and loss of genetic diversity, we've started a new program called the Juvenile Overwintering Program. So at the end of the breeding season, we take some of the juveniles into captivity. So first, we're reducing mortality rates. They're sent up to the Peninsula Humane Society in Burlingame, where they get a veterinary checkup. Then they take blood from them. Those blood samples are sent to the University of Colorado, where they do genetic testing on them. And the following year, they tell us, pair this male up with this particular female here to increase genetic diversity. Then we bring them out to Shoreline and other locations the following year. We put them in these enclosures until they lay the eggs. Then when the eggs are laid and the chicks have hatched, we take the enclosures off. So it's called head starting. We're trying to increase genetic diversity and reduce predation rates on the burrowing owls as well. We've been very successful with that. So, and then this year, not only did we do it at Shoreline, we're after releasing 2 colonies down in Coyote Valley, because those 4 locations I mentioned, San Jose Airport, Moffett Airfield, Shoreline, and Alviso, they're all very, very urban. Those areas can only support a certain amount of burrowing owls because they're surrounded by development. Down in Coyote Valley, you have huge tracts of open space. So we're trying to get populations re-established. They were historically down there. They've all been removed for one reason or another. So all the pairs that were released this year, all of them have chicks. So fingers crossed, we're very successful with that program. And another interesting species we have out here is called black skimmers. So if you look at the lower mandible, or the lower part of the beak, it's much longer than the upper mandible. And they're called black skimmers because they fly over the water surface and they're skimming the surface. So the beak, the lower mandible, is in the water. The upper mandible is just above the water. So if they touch a fish, they close the beak and then they have dinner to feed their chicks. So in 2014, they arrived, to the best of our knowledge, at Shoreline. And they start nesting in the island in the sailing lake. So that sailing lake, some areas are flat, some areas are hilly. So you don't make a nest per se, you just make a little hollow in the ground. And the problem is they kept choosing the hilly part of the island and the eggs kept rolling into the lake. So what we done, built a simple little wooden frame, filled it with sand. We went from 1 pair to 52 pairs in about 5 to 6 years. So you can see some of the chicks here, and there's a chick there, it's camouflaged. Because if predators come along, they prefer to have sandy or gravelly areas so predators can't observe them. So a very, very simple way. We also do a lot of habitat management on the island. So a simple way to increase the population. Just by giving them the ecological requirements that they require. A couple of years ago, we got funding by Santa Clara Valley Water, which is now known as Valley Water, along Permanente Creek. We just picked a small little area and we worked with Santa Clara Valley Audubon Society and Grassroots Ecology. So Grassroots Ecology collected the seeds of local native plants within that particular watershed. They germinated them. We brought them out to Shoreline. Over a 3-year period, we planted just over 1,000 plants, 30 different species. At the end of those 3 years, in this small little area, we counted over 150 species, 90 invertebrates, 46 birds, 2 reptiles, 2 amphibians, and 10 mammals, all in this small little area. So we've done surveys before we've done the restoration and surveys after the restoration. We had well over 100% increase in native species. It just goes to show you the importance of a lot of these native species, especially local species. They evolved with our local climate, they evolved with our local animals, and they also evolved with our local soil. And also very important is for migratory species. Some hummingbirds migrate 3,000 miles per year. If a hummingbird doesn't eat within a 5-hour period, it can actually die. So when they're migrating, it's very, very important to have the foods that they co-evolved with over the years in spring when they're migrating up north and fall when they're coming back. So planting these natives is really beneficial, and just a small area like this just demonstrates how important it is. This year, we're going to do another Valley Water restoration project over at the Mountain View Marsh. We actually had to bring in an entomologist, a specialist in invertebrates, to help us identify the species. And in a 1-hour period, she actually counted 70 different invertebrates in just 1 hour. Just goes to show the importance of these restoration projects. Monarch Butterfly Project. So our mayor signed up for the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor Monarch Pledge, and Google gave us a 3-year funding for a Monarch Butterfly project. So there are 2 parts of this project. We're in our 2nd year at the moment. One is we plant 50% pollinator flowers for the adults. The other part of the project is 50% milkweeds. So monarchs only have 1 larval food, which is actually milkweeds. There are different types of milkweeds. Our local milkweed in this area is narrowleaf milkweed. And I mentioned already some of the volunteers here in the 2nd row. They actually grew some of those milkweeds at home and planted them out here at Shoreline. Because last year we tried to go to the nurseries. Now everybody wants to help monarch butterflies. It's very difficult to find milkweeds in some of the nurseries, which is a good complaint to have. So to prepare the site, we done sheet mulching. We mowed the area, put down recyclable cardboard, and put wood chips, which we got from our forestry department. So we're taking waste products and reusing them again. Then we planted all these native plants, and we actually got listed as a monarch way station. So the first year we planted the milkweeds, we saw a huge increase in monarchs. And actually, the volunteers were out there last week. We actually saw a monarch laying eggs, and here's one of our caterpillars out there, okay? So very, very promising project. So monarchs, I don't know if you know too much about monarchs. They overwinter along the coast of California. And then in February, they start heading north towards Canada. So that generation, they mate, lay eggs, then they die off. Those eggs hatch, turn into caterpillars, pupate, turn into monarchs, start migrating north again. They mate, lay eggs, die off. By the time they reach Canada, that's 5 generations from the time they left California. So that 5th generation, I don't know how they do it, but they fly all the way back to California. They live for about 6 months. So you ever get the opportunity from October, November to about February, you can go to Natural Bridges, State Beach, Lighthouse Park, or Pacific Grove to see those overwintering butterflies. And the last couple of years, the population has dropped from millions to 2,000 in 2020, okay? It rebounded again, but there's a big effort now to start increasing their population. And just planting small areas here at Shoreline, we've seen a big increase in the monarch butterfly population. Then this year, we implemented our Shoreline Wildlife Management Plan. So I mentioned already that we had a Burrowing Owl preservation plan. And this year, because of City Council has put biodiversity as a priority here for the City of Mountain View, we set up this plan. So we chose 5 species. We're not specifically targeting these species. These 5 species represent different types of ecosystems found here at Shoreline. So we use them as umbrella species. So by targeting or focusing on these species, we help many other species. So we have ridgeways rail. If you protect them, you also protect the salt marsh harvest mouse. You protect the pygmy butterfly. You protect nesting areas for northern harriers. So you're just picking one species as an umbrella species, benefiting many other species. The black skimmers, the island on the Shoreline Sailing Lake. We also have Foster's terns nesting on that island, over 100 nests. We have mallards, we have gadwalls, we have killdeer, we have Canada geese, all nesting on the island, one small little island. The whitetail kite, they nest in trees and shrubs and feed in grassland areas by planting shrubs to provide nesting habitat. Not only do you help them out, but every other bird that nests in trees. Then we pick trees which are larval food for other species such as butterflies, or we pick shrubs that provide berries, nuts, seeds. We're trying to increase habitat for all these different species. The monarch butterflies, not only do they use milkweeds as their larval plant, the actual flowers from the milkweeds are great for attracting a diversity of invertebrates. And the San Francisco common yellowthroat nests in wetland areas, along with red-winged blackbirds, orioles. They're all using those particular areas as well. So it really is important to protect biodiversity. And I mentioned already, we're very, very fortunate here in the Bay Area. There's so much things you can do and see. And I really recommend that if you ever get the opportunity, is try to go out to some of these places to see those wildlife, or to work on volunteer groups, get out to know people. You're helping the environment. It's a great educational opportunity. It's a great way to meet other people. So some places I recommend is Edgewood Park. Edgewood Park is located on serpentine soil, which is our state soil here in California. It actually has very, very few nutrients. But a lot of California native plants evolved to live on that nutrient-poor soil. So it's up near Redwood City. So in the springtime, it's a great place to see native plants, especially annuals. Natural Bridges State Beach. I mentioned you have tide pools there, and also the monarch butterflies. Año Nuevo State Park, not too far away from Natural Bridges. You can see the elephant seals, same time from October right through to February. Whale watching trips. I was at one from San Francisco, from Fort Mason. We saw 15 different species, 15 individual whales, 3 different species. It's not always like that every time. I was on another one where we saw no whales at all. Don Edwards National Wildlife Refuge, the Alviso Educational Center, is just down the road. They have all these boardwalks out into the wetlands. They also have a lot of educational programs for children. I've seen them advertising restoration out there, planting native plants. They have walks, docent-led walks to see butterflies, to see owls, and then volunteer opportunities. We've worked with Grassroots Ecology and California Native Plant Society. If you go onto their websites, they list a lot of projects that you can go out there and get your hands dirty, or even here at Shoreline. And a very recent phenomenon is bio-blitzes. Somebody organizes them, Keep Coyote Valley Beautiful. They actually, thank you very much, they actually operate them. So you go out with biologists and you download iNaturalist onto your phone. And when you see species, you just click on it and it actually tells you what those species are. And then they input all that data into a database, which is very, very important to find out what species. And they've actually found some very rare and beautiful species out in some of these areas. So I'll finish with my burrowing owl doing its yoga pose. So there is a great diversity out there. The city of Mountain View is going way beyond what other cities have done, and that's the only reason why we do have burrowing owls out here. That's the only reason we have whitetail kites nesting out here. That's the reason why we have the largest egret rookery in the South San Francisco Bay. That's the only reason why a lot of these species are here only because of plans implemented by the city and also volunteers and the local community that gets involved in restoring, saving, and monitoring a lot of these species. So does anybody have any questions?
Thank you for this talk. It was very interesting. I ride my bike along Stevens Creek Trail, and the area where Google put up their circus tent, those trees, just one by one, have been falling over. And I used to see a lot of egrets down there, and then they were gone for quite a while. Seems like they're coming back, but is there any concern about the trees that have disappeared? And it looks as if it's as a result of the construction they've done, and like the shoreline just seems to be eroding, so that the trees is what it looks like to me. But it concerns me that these trees are just dying, and it must have some impact on the species.
Are these on their property, on the Moffett Airfield property? Or are they in the Stevens Creek corridor? So the creek corridor is owned by Valley Water. We don't have any jurisdiction over there. They typically do save trees. I know they are required to do environmental reviews when there's projects going on. I know here in the city of Mountain View, when we remove heritage trees, we have a 2-to-1 replacement ratio. I know when we switched over to recycling water, a lot of our redwoods died because of the high salt content. And the policy now for the city is not to plant redwoods moving forward. They are native to the mountain range here. They're not actually native to the valley floor. So moving forward, we're focusing more on a lot of native species. We don't really have control over that area. I know, I'm not that familiar with that building, but the other building here on Amphitheater and Shoreline Boulevard, they planted, I think it was 99% California natives. They planted a lot of willow trees, a lot of oak trees. Actually, I saw lots of monarch butterflies over there. I think the majority of it is natives. The city's policy in the North Bayshore area, which is from Highway 101 to Shoreline Park, it's in protected areas such as long creeks. We plant 100% native trees and shrubs. In other areas, it's 80% natives. The other 20% is plants which provide wildlife benefits. So the city is very strict on within the city's jurisdiction. I don't know about the actual Moffett area. But it's kind of strange because they were so active with planting natives on Shoreline Boulevard.
Maybe they're not native.
Yes, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I want to go back to the restoration project. You said that they introduced or reintroduced 30 species, and then as a result of that, there were something like 150 species.
Animal species that we observed within the planting area.
So am I to understand from that that the reintroducing 30 species led to more species coming back into the area, is that right?
Yes, yes, yes. So we did do some preliminary studies monitoring before we planted the plants. It was mostly non-native plants. It was pepperweed, it was fennel, yellow star thistle, and non-native grasses. So we've done some monitoring. And those species do provide some habitat for certain species. But at the end of the 3-year period, when we only monitored within where we planted those over 1,000 plants, 30 different species. And when they were in bloom, we planted goldenrod, marsh baccharis, gum plant, coffeeberry, elderberry. we saw a huge diversity of species within that 3-year period. It was increasing as we planted more and more plants, which really emphasizes the importance of native plants.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, can you talk about the volunteering program?
Sorry?
Can you talk about the volunteering program?
Volunteer program. So actually, Christina, beside you. We don't initiate our own volunteer program. What we do is we wait for other people to contact us. So when they contact us, say a local organization or a company, we'll try to accommodate them. We can't take big groups out here because we're in sensitive areas, but we have tried to do a monthly monitoring project. And Gail might be able to give you the website for that.
I can give you info later.
Yes. So we try to meet once a month to do weeding and plantings. We don't do plantings all the times. Ideally, we do it in spring and fall when temperatures are cooler. But Gail can give you that, the contact information. So we're accommodating their requests to do volunteer projects. But you are welcome to join them.
Yeah, along those lines, we kind of have two different types of volunteer programs out here. So we have sort of our ongoing ones, and then we have these project by project ones that Phil's referencing, where we typically engage larger groups for them. Our ongoing ones are actually in a revamp stage right now. We will be hopefully pursuing restarting that program. We started to get a whole lot of different volunteer programs going, and we're looking to kind of consolidate them into one comprehensive, really beneficial program. And so, but what Phil typically has is groups coming out on a project by project basis, or a day by day basis, where we have you come out versus kind of that ongoing program. And so that's one of the things that we are looking though to start back up. So we will have more information on our website in the very near future with that program. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Hi, I was just wondering how you cooperate with other organizations around here, like the Palo Alto Baylands, because it seems, animals move when.
Yes, so we do work with the rangers at Palo Alto, at the Baylands Park. We exchange information on some of the species. Like last couple of years, we've had coyotes coming out here, staying year-round. Historically, they're only migratory individuals coming through. So they've been out at Palo Alto for a while, and then they've come over here now. So we have some exchange of information. Because we're doing a lot of monitoring of burrowing owls, they always notify us when burrowing owls show up at the Palo Alto Baylands. So they don't have breeding burrowing owls out there. They have migratory birds which arrive in wintertime. So they'll often keep us up to date on any individuals that arrive out there because they know we're monitoring them. And then we're also interested to find out if there are the owls that are banded here, because we do want to find out how far the owls are traveling from Shoreline. But the majority of owls out there are migratory, non-banded burrowing owls, so not the owls born here.
Thank you. This was fascinating. I have a question about the Killdeer bird. I saw those eggs. So once you find them, what do?
We make a map which we distribute to all the staff at Shoreline to make sure they don't drive on that road, and we put cones down so they won't accidentally drive over the eggs. So fortunately to date, they've always been in areas where we can use an alternative road, so we've never had too many major problems with them. They do have high predation rates because they are easy to be found by other predators, but they will have multiple broods, and the fact that they're still here in large numbers, they're obviously very, very successful birds. So we do highlight where they are internally on our maps, and our staff avoid them, and then we put cones down around them.
I've seen what I think are Nutria in the Permanente Creek close to 101. I tried to report those, and I was asked for close-up photographs, which I couldn't really get down into Permanente Creek to do that. Are you aware of any other mammals that kind of swim like Nutria that could be in Permanente Creek?
So last year, Palo Alto was reporting beavers. I don't think there are beavers in Permanente Creek. I've also seen what you've seen as well. I don't think they're Nutria. I think they're, I can't remember the name, but it's a type of rat, but it's not a Nutria. I don't think so. They do have a little, if you look at the tails, So the beaver's tail is much different to the nutria or the other rodents. They're reporting at least one adult and one young in the Palo Alto Baylands. We've never seen them here at Shoreline. I know also river otters are returning to the Bay Area. We haven't seen them at Shoreline, but hopefully they will arrive here one of these days. It could be a muskrat, yes, yes. They're big, they're about this size. Yes, yes. So just look at the tails. If it's flat tail, it'll be the beaver.
Wonderfully presented, great information. Thank you, Phil. Couple questions. How do you anticipate working with SFEI on the biodiversity study or program? One. Two, if you had the ability to introduce any policies yourself for the city of Mountain View regarding to biodiversity, what would they be? And then a third.
You're trying to get me into trouble.
Do you have a population number for the red hawks here? I don't know if I'm seeing the same one or if there are a large number of them. So you can answer any of those that you feel.
I'll start with the red-tailed hawks. So we do know they have nested this year at the Shoreline Amphitheatre. There was at least 2 young. One was successful, the other one didn't make it. They do nest. They have nest on the golf course in a tree successfully, but we do see more than 1 breeding pair and juvenile. So it's possible that we have 2 to 3 pairs. I've also seen them on the electrical pylons between here and Palo Alto. So they seem to be doing very, very well out here because they eat ground squirrels and eat coots. So the prey base is out here for them, and we have seen them over the years breeding. Policies. I think the city, I live in San Jose and I go to city council meetings in San Jose, and hopefully there's nobody here from the council in San Jose. I don't think they're very active when it comes to biodiversity and wildlife. I've spoken several times on issues about wildlife. The city of Mountain View, I mentioned the Burrowing Owl Preservation Plan, I mentioned the Shoreline Wildlife Management Plan. They're implementing a biodiversity plan for the rest of the city. They already have a tree canopy cover plan. So they're very, very proactive in that respect. And another thing I see between the difference between Mountain View and San Jose, and Mountain View has a tendency to create parks everywhere. I've seen them buy buildings in residential areas which have big backyards, remove the building and just turn it into a local little park. They're very strict with the Parks and Recreation Commission. They're very strict on the 2-to-1 replacement tree ratio. We've worked with them on numerous occasions to plant some of the species out here. So I have to say that Mountain View is very, very advanced compared to other cities. And even the fact that they hired a full-time biologist, very few cities do that also. So I'd have to say Mountain View is up here when it comes to things, and San Jose is kind of down there. And what was the third question? That's only in its initial design period. I know I will be working on the project at one stage or another. I think they're only kind of looking at what to do or where the focus will be at the moment. They haven't gone to the same extent as the Shoreline Wildlife Management Plan, which we just implemented this year. So we just spent a significant amount of time on working on that, and hopefully because we have a lot of protected species here. The rest of Mountain View wouldn't have the same level that we have here because you don't have that high level of biodiversity and also high level of endangered and protected species out here. But hopefully, I know the plan is to plant natives and emphasize the importance of open space and species conservation.
I was wondering if you knew anything about the fish that are living in Shoreline Lake. We've seen halibut or flatfish there a couple times. Yes.
So the water for this Shoreline Sailing Lake is pumped in from the Charleston Slough. So once those species get in here as very, very small fry or as very small fish, once they grow, they can't get back out again because the water is pumped from the lake back into Permanente Creek. So any species that get in there, and I have seen ray and I have seen big fish. I know when it comes to shellfish like mussels and clams, it has some of the highest abundance of native shellfish in, I think, in the South San Francisco Bay Area. But they are trapped once they get in there and turn into big fish. It would be really nice to see what species are out there, but that's a big study.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I know we can keep going with questions, but we do have some special guests outside here that I don't want to get restless while they're waiting for us. So we're actually going to take like a 2 to 3 minute break so we can get them all set up, get everybody mic'd up. So this is your time to restroom, coffee, food, all of that, and then we'll get started here once we get fully set up in here. But I don't want to keep our friends waiting outside. So but there will be questions at a chance for questions at the end as well. All right, so thank you all. I know you're all tired of hearing me talk, and I am definitely the least interesting one in the room. So I'm going to hand it over to Phil to get us back on track. Again, if we have questions, please give us a second to pass the mic around. Your questions have been awesome, and we love getting that recorded and as part of this video, and provides a little bit of context for when we're getting the wonderful learning experience that we're getting here. And so with that, I'm going to let Phil provide an introduction.
Okay, I just want to introduce Anna and Olivia from the Wildlife Education and Rehabilitation Center. So these centers are very, very important, especially this time of the year, to protect and save wildlife. Out here at Shoreline all the time, you'll see little nestlings falling out of the nests, or birds and other animals can get injured, especially when they first start flying. They don't have the skills to fly. They often collide into buildings, and windows can be very, very reflective. So these organizations are non-profits which spend all their time and all their energy into saving these species and then rehabilitating them and then releasing them. It does require a vast amount of time, and especially with volunteers, and Anna and Olivia can explain more about that. But we asked them to bring 4 species that we regularly see out here at Shoreline, including our iconic burrowing owls. So I'm going to hand it over to them, and I just want to let you know, you should check out their website to look at the great work that they do to save a lot of these species here in Santa Clara County.
Awesome, thank you. I'm Mike, yeah. Yes, so my name is Anna, and this is Olivia, and yes, we are both from WERC, the Wildlife Education and Rehabilitation Center. Pretty much what we do, kind of what Phil was talking about, is when people find sick, injured, or orphaned native wildlife, we take them in, and our goal is to fix them up so we can get them back out into the wild. That is our main purpose. We do our best. You know, sometimes animals come into us that, you know, that we can't help out, or where we are able to help them out. But our goal is to kind of negate the human interaction, because sometimes it's negative. You know, even though we're not purposely doing that when we drive our cars, sometimes animals get hit by cars. Our pets sometimes catch these animals. So we do our best to save the animals we can to put them back out to the wild. Even sometimes animals get hurt naturally. If we can help them, we will help those guys, again, to take place for one that might have passed away due to human interaction. Because unfortunately, humans kind of have a big role in our ecosystem. We're hoping to make that more of a positive kind of interaction. And so also, not only do we take in sick, injured, and orphaned native wildlife, but we also come out to groups like this in schools to educate everybody about our local wildlife. So we do just deal with native species. At the Wildlife Center, we do specialize in birds of prey and also baby bobcats. So I didn't bring a baby bobcat here today, though. We do have 3 in care right now, but again, those guys are going back out to the wild. The animals that you guys are going to meet here today, again, all have a reason why they're not back out into the wild. So Olivia is going to go get our first bird ready. So I know Phil has already talked to you a lot about burrowing owls. He is by far the expert. He knows a lot more about them than I do, so I'm going to do my best on this one.
Say something, I forgot to mention it. We're actually working with work for our juvenile overwintering burrowing owl program. So all the burrowing owl juveniles that we capture at the end of the year, they all go to work, and the volunteers there feed them, give them fresh water, take care of them in a facility in Coyote Valley. And all of that is done free of charge to help the burrowing owls. And if it wasn't for this organization, we'd have fewer burrowing owls out in this area.
Yes, so we are working very closely with talents like Phil mentioned as well. So it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding, especially when these guys get to go back out into the wild. That's why we do what we do, right, is we want these animals back out in the wild. So while the bird gets ready to come in, again, she is going to be a burrowing owl. And this is a bird that you will find around this area. And here, come in. So you might notice something looking a little bit strange with her. Right now she does have her wing out. That's because, sorry Olivia, but you don't make a good perch. So So she's kind of has that wing out there to help her keep her balance. The reason why you only see one wing though is because the reason why we have her, she's actually missing her other wing. She only has one wing. So you can imagine a one-winged burrowing owl would not do very well out in the wild. So that's why, again, she is non-releasable. What more than likely happened to her, again, it was a human wildlife conflict, is we believe she was hit by a car due to the fact that she was found near the roadway. So again, she can't tell us exactly what happened. But luckily somebody spotted her and they brought her into the wildlife center. At that time, she did have both wings. But what happened was she had what was called a compound fracture, which is actually when the bone comes through the skin. And you can imagine that is not a good thing, especially as we don't know how long she was on the ground, how long that bone was exposed to the air, because they can pick up bacteria and things get into the bone, which is very dangerous. So we got her, we put her on antibiotics right away to try to kill any bacteria that might have gotten in the bone or in her body. And our vet tried to save the wing. However, she did end up developing an infection. And so the only way to save her life was to actually amputate that wing. So she is actually missing from her elbow down. I know it looks like her wing's completely gone, but she does have the humerus bone still intact, but her elbow down has been removed. So like I mentioned, unfortunately, she cannot go back out into the wild. But she is a very important animal for us at the Wildlife Center because, again, she gets to come out so people get to see these guys up close. Because we'd rather see them up close this way or, you know, at a distance out in the wild, because I think that's a really big problem with these people, the burrowing owls, is they'll see them and a lot of people will try to get too close to them. And these guys do live in big groups and they do have owls kind of on guard, and they're so focused on that person that predators can easily come in and snatch some of these owls out of the way. And I'm sure a lot of it has been mentioned too, you know, why these guys' numbers are dropping out in the area, you know, with a lot of building, habitat loss. These guys do kind of move from spot to spot, but they come back and to those areas. But then so once they leave, a lot of people find the opportunity that's when they want to build, right? Because you can't build when they are on the property. So they wait for them to fly away, and then these guys come back and they lost that habitat. Luckily, you know, groups like Talons are helping bring these guys back up. There was a very high mortality rate too for the young, which is why that breeding program was started. It started with first, you know, just taking the baby birds from the wild to raise in captivity to go back out into the wild to ensure that they survived long enough to get back out. Because again, that mortality rate was so high for these little guys. They're very different than a lot of other birds, but they're owls in particular. Most owls are they're not social. They kind of, there's one or two and that's it. You know, they mate for life, and you usually don't see more than that unless they have young. Or again, these guys do live in those colonies. So when you're out here walking around and stuff, you might see these guys in kind of up the fields, up on fence posts. You notice they do have long legs. If she was standing up straight, you notice she'd have that long kind of high stance. And again, that's so they can kind of view and see kind of what's going around them. Being that she is an owl, again, a lot of people don't realize not all owls are nocturnal. So as you guys know, these guys are diurnal, so awake during the daytime and sleep at night. And they can also be active at night as well, but again, these guys are considered a diurnal owl. There's actually 3 species of daytime owls, and she is one of them. And then we also have the northern pygmy owl, which is even smaller than her, and also the elf owl, which is actually the smallest owl. But we don't have those guys in the area. We do have the pygmy owls, and more in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but then these guys are going to be found around here. And what's also really cool about them is her coloring is a very kind of light brown, because again, she's out during the daytime. That brown kind of helps her blend in with the fields and with the dirt, where a lot of her nocturnal cousins coming out at night, they actually look more like tree bark, because again, they're going to be up in the tree. These guys are going to be down in the burrows. To help save kind of their habitat, make really good places for these guys to go, organizations, again, like Talon, put in artificial burrows too, so these guys have a place to live, because again, that's what they can't build a big burrow by themselves. They usually take over other animals' burrows. They could do a little bit of digging, but not quite. They're not designed like the badgers and the ground squirrels, right? We all know those ground squirrels, kind of digging those holes. And again, these guys are good to have around. They do eat a lot of insects. They'll eat a lot of mice. They eat small reptiles. So again, they're going to help control the prey population, because we don't want the population of like rats and mice and things to get out of control where there's not enough food for those guys to eat, eat. There's not enough habitat. Diseases spread really quickly. So again, that's why predators like owls, the burrowing owl, are so important to keep around to help control those numbers, because nature always has checks and balances. And predators are a very important role, even though I know it seems kind of sad sometimes because these guys are carnivore, that they have to eat other animals. But again, there's a purpose for that. So we really do like these guys kind of around. So I do have some more animals I want to share with you guys, ones you can find around here. But does anybody have any questions about Tara, about WRC and the burrowing owls? So the question.
Hi, thank you. It's so nice to see one so close. What is the reason why burrowing owls are so emphasized when talking about this area around here? I think it's probably like anytime you talk about Shoreline Park or the area around here, you talk about burrowing owls. Why is there such an emphasis on talking about this specific species?
Yeah, so around this area, the reason why you hear a lot about them here is because this is, I believe, one of the biggest populations that we have there. I mean, I can check with you because you know that a little bit better than I do. This is one of the most well-known, that there's a large quantity of them around, but that also creates problems too, right? When a lot of people know when these species are, around, everybody wants to come and see them, and everybody coming in, that can affect these guys. Like I mentioned, I know that there has been cases where people have been come out to go and watch them, and they either get too close or they distract them, which makes it very easy for a predator to kind of come in. But yeah, Shoreline is associated with these guys because there are you'll more likely see them here than a lot of other places, because there is a big colony. I'm not saying you can't go and look at them, you'll keep your eye out, but it's always just remember these are wild animals. It's best to stay a distance away from them. Don't try to get as close as you can, because again, that can distract these guys and cause problems down the road. Good question.
Thank you. I was curious, even though she's got broken wing or only one wing, can she still be used for breeding and biodiversity? Or I heard you say mated for life as well, so maybe that makes it a problem.
No, so animals that mate for life, I'm pretty sure, again, that the owls, a lot of the birds of prey do mate for life. That's where I put that in there. So if something happens to one of their mates, they will go find another one. So it's not that this is it, nothing else, but if one disappears for a long time, they're not going to be like, well, that was my chance. They will find somebody else. But in general, it's not like some species where it's a bunch of different ones. Again, burrowing owls might be different. I'm just saying in a lot of the birds of prey in general. Again, Phil would be a good one to kind of ask that more of the kind of behavioral with these guys. But as far as her, that was, I know, in the talks a little bit. I think when we first kind of talked to you, our executive director was talking about it, because it would be nice to get her genes back into the pool of things. So I know females tend to be not as many as the males. I know that was true. I think it was last year with the young that comes in. The one issue, it's not as easy as it sounds. Like, we'd be all for that, but these animals that you guys are meeting, they don't belong to us. So yes, they're on our permits. We do have permits for them, but they are under our federal permit and state permit. So you would have to go through a lot of hoops to get permission to be able to use her in that breeding program. But I think that would be a kind of a cool thing to do. Again, get her genes, because unfortunately, she can't be back out into the wild. Being that she can't go in the wild, her gene pool just stopped right there. So it's kind of something to kind of look into, but again, it's all that red tape kind of getting through it. Yep.
Have a scientific collecting permit to do captive breeding and overwintering. We're not allowed to breed owls from outside of our county. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife doesn't allow it at the moment. So we don't know where she came from. More than likely, she's a migratory owl, based on the time of year she was found. So she's not allowed into our program at the moment.
See, I knew you knew, because I knew it was a
Even though we need new genes.
Yeah, I knew that there was something, because I know we were talks about it when we first got in communication, putting her into her. Yeah, like I said, it's all that red tape, right? Yeah, she was found again alongside the road. She was down in Morgan Hill, but yeah, we don't usually have them around there, so like Phil said, she's probably just flying through. So it's unfortunate. I didn't know there was a definite no, but yeah. Sorry, Tara. No young for you. All right, so Olivia's gonna go put her back, because she's gonna get our next bird ready. And I'm trying to, so the next bird that we will bring out is, again, another one that you'll find around here. Now Tara, she's out during the daytime, so again, you might see a little bird kind of popping around out here. Again, usually, like I said, getting up on their tippy toes, kind of bouncing up and down, just trying to survey the area. This next animal, though, is super common, a lot more common than those the burrowing owls, but you might not notice it as much because this one comes out at night. She is nocturnal, but she is also an owl. So we got the daytime owl, now we got the nighttime owl. These guys also not only live here, but I'm pretty sure they probably live right by wherever you guys live. They're the most common owl we have in the area. If you go outside at night and you hear a screeching, screaming sound, you may think it's a screech owl because that would make sense with the name, but screech owls don't screech. This owl, as you may or may not know, is a barn owl. Okay, barn owl. And again, she could be a little bit more antsy as a bird. Today we brought the hard birds to bring out today. They all have their own little unique personalities. This bird, she was actually purposely hurt by a person. And again, we'll go more into that story when you guys do meet her. You're going to notice something, right away that looks weird, especially because when she comes in, she doesn't like us moving around with her a lot. So that's why Olivia might have to stand still in one area because she might do what's called baiting, where she kind of jumps and bounces around on the hand. And that's because she's like, oh my gosh, I want to go up really high. I see all this lights and things above me. So she wants to go up to the highest point because birds feel the safest up there. Here she comes in. She also might give you the evil stare. She definitely. So this is Barnadette. She is a barn owl. You can see looks very differently than that burrowing owl because again, they live very differently, right? The burrowing owl is going to live in the ground, and she is going to live up in kind of different places. We'll kind of go over that because most of the time when you think of an owl, you think they live up in a tree. Yes, these guys can go up in trees, but as their name suggests, a barn owl, right, they actually do like to live in barns. Now, again, barns aren't naturally, that's human-made. So naturally, they would live in trees, crevices, things that they can find. They'll lay their eggs directly on the ground, pretty much. They want to be up high. But if they have to, they will be kind of on the lower side, but they'll lay their eggs, like even in barns, on top of hay bales. They don't build nests, okay? So again, very different than that burrowing owl, which is going to be having their eggs under the ground in those burrows. So going back to her story, why we do have her, again, it might be a little bit tricky because she's actually behaving herself. Good job. But you can see this left wing looks different than the right. Again, if she cooperates and kind of moves around a little bit, she too, like Tara, is missing part of her wing. Okay, she's missing her wrist on that left wing. Now, like I said, somebody did this intentionally. So what happened to her is she was actually found on the ground in Gilroy, unable to fly. So someone called the police department, who brought her into us. We took a close look at her and knew right away why she wasn't able to fly. Like I said, she is missing her wrist on that left wing. You can see when she kind of opened it right there. And it wasn't something that happens in nature. It was a clean cut. Oh, that's one thing I forgot to mention before. Birds do go to the bathroom a lot because, again, they want to be nice and light so they can be able to fly. We'll clean it up, I promise. I'll make Olivia clean it up anyway. No, that's the one thing we should train the birds. You've got to clean up your own mess. So again, for me, moving around, it's a lot of movement. She would be sleeping right now. But yeah, she can't fly, which is why she kind of falling back down and then climbing back up on the hand. But so when she came into us, again, like I said, we saw it was a clean cut. We tried to see if anybody had permits for an owl in the area because, again, you can't just have one. Even WRC, like I mentioned, they don't belong to us. They're, federal government, state. We have permits to have them to bring them out here. We couldn't find anybody who had permits in the area. We did get one tip back that for Halloween that year, somebody was dressed as Harry Potter. And if you're familiar with Harry Potter, there's owls in that story. So this person supposedly walked around with a barn owl in their hand. So we don't know for sure, but she could have been a Halloween prop. We don't know how this person got them. If they found, a lot of times barn owls can be found as youngsters. They fall off from the nest or even purposely pushed out of the nest. And we'll talk about why that is with these guys. It's kind of to make sure that some babies will survive, they'll actually purposely push others out. So someone might have found that, took it home and thought it would be a great idea to raise them as a pet. But if I know some people do keep birds as pets, and birds do fly. So a lot of times with pet birds, people will trim their feathers. It's kind of unfortunate because you have a pet bird, they fly. So it's always good to let them be able to have their natural exercise. But that's a common practice is trimming the feathers. But can you imagine, feathers grow back. So can you imagine trying to keep a wild animal like a barn owl, have to trim it every so often because once those feathers grow well enough, it can fly. So in a more permanent solution, is by doing what's called pinioning, where it's actually they remove that wrist of the bird. And so it's common, like if you go to a lot of zoos and you see those exotic birds and they're out in these open enclosures, and you wonder, like, why aren't they flying away? That's because they remove those wrists. So it's a good, way that they can still be out and not be able to escape and get into the unnatural habitat around here for like the zoos. So again, that's the only tip that we had. Was they didn't want to give us the family's name because they didn't want to get them in trouble. So nothing was done about it. But so again, hopefully by her coming out to groups, people realize if they do find an owl, they know not to keep it as a pet. Because unfortunately, we would rather her be out in the wild, and now she can't. So instead, she is at our center. And like I said, she does come out to groups like this, but she also is a very big help where she acts as a surrogate parent for us. So when we get baby barn owls in, we will put them with her because we don't want them associating humans as the caregivers, as like, oh, they need food, right? We want them to know that they are an owl and that they should stay far away from people, right? Because that's when they get released back onto the wild, that's how we want them to behave. I know a lot of people think it would be cool for an owl to come fly down at you, but trust me, even though as cool as that sounds, it'd be pretty scary if these guys we're just randomly coming down trying to land on you. You notice Olivia here is wearing a glove. That's because she does have those sharp talons in order for her to hunt her prey. So like I said, their interesting habit of why a lot of times these birds do need our help, why they get found on the ground a lot, is barn owls, they lay their eggs days apart from each other in their nest. And that's why when they hatch, those babies are all different sizes. You get big ones down to the small ones. So when there's a lot of food around for these guys to eat, they're all gonna get fed and they're all gonna grow, and more of those guys are gonna survive. On years where there's not a lot of food around, if they were all the same size, they would all fight with each other and probably injure each other. This time, being that they're all different sizes, the younger ones will get knocked out of the nest. So there's not as big of a fight. I know that sounds hard, and sometimes, again, people will find them. Our first goal, though, is when we do see an owl or an animal out of its nest that shouldn't be, we do try to put them back in. And if it happens again, then we know, okay, there's an issue there, and then we will take them in and put them with her. So that's probably one of the most common reasons why we get those barn owls. The other reason we get these guys in, like I mentioned, they don't build nests. They lay their eggs directly on hay bales, or they love palm trees too. Again, so if you have a palm tree around, you might have some barn owls because those palm trees make a nice little crevice for them. Also, food comes up to them. Well, rats will go up into palm trees. And it's also harder for predators such as raccoons to climb up that tree to get into that nest to eat their young. So it doesn't mean that's all they live in is palm trees, but they do like to be up nice and high. So when they lay eggs, though, on hay bales, as you guys know, hay is grown all over the place, but they ship it places as well, right? So place will grow it and ship it to a store to be sold for people to feed to their livestock. So what happens is these babies are in those hay bales, the hay bales get shipped, and the babies aren't noticed. They're not noticed until they get unloaded at the place that the hay is being sold. I'm sure there's probably some that don't make it. We only hear about the ones that do. But obviously the parent bird isn't following that truck to take care of her young. So we'll get them in that way as well. And it's surprisingly a lot more common than you would think, getting them that way. And again, but she helps us out by raising them so we can get those guys back out into the wild. And wineries love it. We get a lot of requests from wineries for us to go and release them on their properties. Because again, these guys are great at rodent control, again, going after those rats and mice and gophers. It's amazing. We watched, there's some footage of wild barn owls that were feeding their young, and they're feeding like big old gophers to these tiny little babies. And we're sitting, when we have the babies in there, we're chopping up their food into tiny little pieces. And I'm like, wait, why are we doing that? The mama bird doesn't even do that. What's also really cool, I know we'll put her away pretty soon. With these guys is, out of all animals that have been tested, the barn owl has the best hearing. Okay, so they have really good hearing, because their hearing in owls are actually one of their most important senses. A lot of people think it's eyesight. Eyesight is important so they don't crash into things when they're flying, but their hearing is more important in order to find their food. Because their food's not going to be out in the open where they can see it. It's going to be hiding. So these guys, again, use that hearing to hear a little mouse or a gopher scurrying underneath some leaves or grasses, and can actually pinpoint exactly where that sound's coming from. What gives her better hearing than us is, one, her ears are quite large compared to the size of her head. She's got two big holes on the side of her head. You can't really see them because they are behind those feathers. But also the other big difference between her ears and ours is her ears are asymmetrical. So she has one up high and one down low. Okay, now we wouldn't really want ears like that, would we? But it would give us better hearing. Because they can actually pinpoint where that sound is coming from. So when we hear noises, we can say it's coming from that general area. But again, she can go, boom, it's right there, swoop down and grab a mouse without even having to even see it. Okay, so again, hearing is very important to those guys. Her coloring is also different than a lot of the other owls because, again, she likes to be big open fields because there's a lot more of those kind of dry grasses, like around here. This is perfect habitat for them. But like I mentioned, they will live close in by you is because we produce a lot of garbage. Now, they're not eating the garbage that we're putting out there, but they're eating the animals our garbage is attracting. So these guys, like I mentioned, are the most common owl. And these are the ones that make that screeching, screaming noise at nighttime. And I almost think sometimes maybe that's where kind of ghost stories come from. Because one, they like abandoned old buildings, right? Because it's a nice shelter and that they can be in to protect them from the elements. And two, they're very white. I know she's kind of yellowish on the outside, but at night, when you see the underside, it looks pretty white against the night sky. And they make that scary, screechy banshee sound. So you never know. You could be seeing a ghost right now. All right, we're going to put Barnadette back so she can get ready for the other animals. Does anybody have any questions? I know I talked a lot about her because I didn't want to pretend that I was an expert on the burrowing owls when we had the real expert in the room over here. No questions about her? Okay. Oh, yes. He's going to bring the mic or microphone.
So do these owls have that different shape of eyeball that a lot of owls have? And if so, if they don't use their vision that much, what is the reason they would need that telescopic vision?
Very good, because I didn't really talk about her eyes. So she does have similar eye structure to all the other owls, where her eyes are cylinder shaped. They're very long tubes within their head. They're pretty much, their face is just eyeballs and a beak. That's it. Everything else is just all feathers. So owls do have really good eyesight because, again, they are hunting when there's low light around. So those big kind of like cylinder eyes allow for a lot more light to be able to come into the eyes. We have cones and rods in their eyes. I'm not going to pretend that I know which one's better for vision or anything, but I know they have more of the one that helps them see more kind of details and stuff. We have one that helps us see more colors because color is important to us. It's not as important to those owls. But because of the shape of their eyes being big cylinders, they can't rotate their eyes at all in their head. That's why they have to turn their heads in order to look and see what's around them. Now, they can't turn their heads all the way around, though, because they would have no neck attaching their head onto their body, so their head would pop off and roll on the ground. Not a good adaptation. But they can turn their heads 3/4 of the way around because they have twice as many bones in their neck than we do. We have 7, they have 14. So again, the eyesight, though, is more important when they're flying at low light, so again, they're not crashing into stuff. They also do have a special membrane in their eye as well that acts like a mirror. Again, I'm not going to pretend to be able to, I always try to say that word and I never can. It starts with a lutissimus. Yeah, there's a very hard word to say, but that's what that membrane's called. We'll just leave it at that. But it acts like a mirror. So a lot of nocturnal animals have this. So if you ever go outside at night and you shine a flashlight around and you hit an animal's eyes, they look like they're glowing back at you. They're not actually glowing, they're reflecting that light back. So again, it helps these animals that need to see in low light situations. It bounces off that membrane and amplifies that light. So again, gives them the better sight. And like I said, I know the hearing is more important, but again, you still want to be able to see so you don't crash into anything. And just like everything, you do need light in order to be able to see. So even an owl with great vision, they can't see in the space vacuum of time, right? Or where everything's there's no light present at all. You do need some light, and that's why those membranes kind of help amplify that. Luckily, there's light around all the time, such as the moon creates light and stars. As you can imagine, we are going to bring out a bigger bird right now. Even though birds in general are very light, they're a lot smaller than they look, because like I said, they're mostly feathers, and this bird's no exception. She's about just a little bit over around 3 pounds, but she is still going to be a big bird. She's actually kind of retired. She doesn't go out to many events anymore. She's very old. We got her, I forgot when it was, but we've had her for, she's over 25 years old. And that's the average life expectancy of these guys. But they're a very common one that you'll see, especially because they're out during the daytime. So maybe when you go outside today, you can look up the skies, you might see one. They're not as common as some birds because you usually only see one or two. Because like I mentioned, she's a bird of prey. They just like to be by themselves or with their mate, and that's pretty much about it. Yeah, she's getting her out. It takes her a little bit. She likes to come out of her kennel, so sometimes she just kind of like darts out. So that's why Olivia's taking her time to be very careful with her. So she comes out gracefully because her injury has nothing to do with her flight. She is fully flighted, unlike the first two birds that you saw. At the Wildlife Center, probably the most common reason why we can't release a bird is usually due to them not being able to fly. Wing injuries are the hardest. Depending on what the problem is, it depends whether we can help them. When birds break their bones at the joints, unfortunately there's not much we can do because by keeping that bone still so it can heal, those joints calcify because they need to be stretched and moved. So when the bones are broken kind of mid-shaft, then we can put pins in it to hold those bones together. All right, let's meet Wapika. Wapika means spirited woman, which is definitely her. This is a red-tailed hawk. Okay, so again, a very common bird of prey that you will see out here soaring around searching for her prey. These guys do majority eat more mammals, so they're going to go after those ground squirrels, they'll go after rabbits. They also will eat reptiles as well. They will go after snakes, even those rattlesnakes. Okay, even though rattlesnakes are kind of scary, but there's a lot of animals out there that do eat them, so they actually do have kind of a hard life. But yeah, red-tailed hawks, as you can imagine, they do have that reddish colored tail, but they don't get that red tail until they're about 2 years old. So sometimes you might see a hawk flying around, you're like, oh, it has a brown tail, it's not a red tail. But that doesn't mean that. Red tails are the largest hawk that we do have around here. Now, the reason why we have her and she's not out in the wild, again, it's another unfortunate story because, like Barnadette, somebody hurt her on purpose. So these guys normally go after live prey, right? But they are opportunistic. If they're having a hard time hunting or they do see some dead animal, they will go down and eat that carrion as well. But again, they prefer fresh food. Well, one day over on Pacheco Pass, she was kind of feeling hungry. She was actually eating some roadkill on the side of the road where a truck actually saw her and decided it would be a really fun idea to swerve off the road and try to hit her. So again, this truck swerved off, and as she's flying up, actually made contact and hit her. We knew that happened because the car behind witnessed it. He wrote down the license plate number of the truck, picked her up and brought her into the Wildlife Center. He did try to press charges, but again, it was his word against the other guy's word, so unfortunately nothing was done. And so we got her. She had lots of broken bones, but luckily there was nothing at the joint, so they were able to heal really well, and she was still able to maintain her flight. Now, the cause why she can't go back out into the wild is she actually is now blind in her right eye. She has her bad eye this way, so it might be a little bit hard to see, but if you do get a chance to look at her right eye, it almost looks like there's clouds in there. She can no longer see from that side. And as you may know, hawks really rely on their eyesight. That is their main important sense. So with the owls, it's more their hearing. These guys are more their eyesight when they're flying up, looking kind of down. They see the movement of their prey to be able to swoop down and go and get. Being that she is blind in the one eye, she doesn't even fly straight anymore. So at the Wildlife Center, she is in an enclosure where she can fly around. We try to put her in our big flight aviary when we had room for it. We do have big aviaries for when the animals need to get those muscles up to be able to fly. She does not do well in the big enclosures because of that eyesight. She ends up crashing into things, and she actually has broken a bone a few times. So unfortunately, we're very reluctant to put her in our bigger enclosures. She does better in the smaller area. But she flies in half circles. She doesn't fly in a straight line. So you can imagine releasing a bird like this that can't really kind of tell where things are, not going to work out very well. So that is why we do have her. Currently, like I mentioned with Barnadette, that we do use our educational animals as surrogate parents. Wapika here, she actually has a baby in with her right now. She's on a break. I took her away from her baby. She doesn't have as much maternal instincts as some of our other birds. We have a great horned owl as well, and she's actually, this is, was it 7, 8? She's on her 8th baby right now. Luckily, the other ones are a little bigger. They're in our big flight aviary, so she has 3. Is it 3 little ones right currently in with her? Here she has 3 of them currently in there, and she has the best motherly instinct of all our educational animals. She actually will physically go and feed them. So it's kind of cool to catch her doing that. But it makes her very hard to take her out to programs because she gets very protective of those guys. So you can always check out our social media. On Facebook, we have some great videos of her taking care of her babies. Haven't caught her doing it. She pretty much just sits there. She's kind of the deadbeat mom. But at least, at least her presence is more important. That's what we really care about. We have another another red-tailed hawk baby that came into us 2 days ago, and so will eventually be moved in with her with the other baby. The reason we don't move them in right away is they do have to go in quarantine to kind of make sure that everything's okay with the baby, make sure it doesn't have anything, because we don't want to get her sick or the other youngster sick as well. So that's probably her main job at the Wildlife Center. Like I said, she is kind of retired. She doesn't come out as much to events. She does get out at the center because it's not fair for these animals to be stuck in their enclosures all the time. So we have some volunteers and Olivia here taking her out on walks. Not like a dog on kind of a leash or anything like that, just kind of how she has her, but to change the scenery, just kind of walking around so they can see different things. Because it's unfortunate these animals are stuck in captivity. Again, that's not our main purpose. But again, they do help us out by getting them back out into the wild. And on average, like I think I mentioned, these guys live about 25 years, and she is over that, so we don't know. But again, that's just an average. So in captivity, they tend to live a little bit longer because they don't have to worry about, fighting for food or territories, because red-tailed hawks are very territorial. Red-shouldered hawks are another very common hawk that you'll see around here. Those ones, if you hear a hawk that's just very noisy, more than likely it's going to be those red shoulders. They're smaller than these guys. They're more of a bird-eating type of hawk. But you will see them dive bombing these guys, kind of trying to drive them out of the territory. In fact, you see a lot of birds trying to attack the poor red-tailed hawks. They have it hard. Crows, blackbirds, things like that. Again, they're just pushing them out of the way because, again, these are predatory animals. So they're like, hey, let's stay away from our families. So they do get pushed around a lot, even though, like I mentioned, these guys are mostly a mammal-eating bird of prey. For their eyes, versus, because the owls, we mentioned, are big cylinders in their head, her eyes aren't like that. They do have a little bit more movement. Like I said, the owls can't move their eyes. These guys, along with falcons, they see best at 45-degree angles. So that's why if you ever notice, you see these birds kind of flying above the sky, and you can kind of see them like tilting their heads, because again, they're trying to focus and kind of look on the ground for their prey. Because again, they're not going after the birds in the air like some of the peregrine falcons. Those guys are going after fast-moving things, so they got to be quick with their speed. She's going more stuff on the ground. We do get a lot of people get concerned about them going after their cats and dogs. So even though she's a pretty big bird, again, she's a lot lighter than she looks, unless you have a really tiny, animal. But it's still not very common for them to go after our pets. That's not a normal diet for them. The times when animals take more risks in going after things that aren't normal for them is usually if they're struggling out in the wild. Unfortunately, a lot of hawks don't make it past the second year because they have to really be really good at hunting, right, in order to feed themselves. So a lot of times we will get hawks in that are just young, not flying, usually because they are very thin and they just don't have the energy anymore. So for those guys at the center, we have, of course, plump them up. We do put them in our big flight aviaries to build up. The only time that we have to feed our animals live food is we will put live mice in those enclosures, so again, they can help develop those skills, and then we have to release them back out in the wild and hope that they learn something. A lot of the time, we call it mouse school, right? They got to be taught something. So her babies will go through that process too, especially because they came in as a baby. But again, those are some common reasons why we get them. We get them hit by cars too, as well, unfortunately. But again, depending on what damage that did, sometimes it's just a minor concussion. Those are the lucky ones that get put back. But again, our goal is try to help as many as we can to kind of help those ones that weren't able to be saved. All right, we'll put Wapika back. She's actually behaving herself really, really well. Thank you, Wapika. like I said, it's been a while since she's been out to outside of WRC. She usually, it's kind of funny because she doesn't travel as well anymore. That's when we stopped taking her far distances. And I found that the places that tend to drive farther, because we're all the way down in Morgan Hill, the places that we have to drive a farther distance, she seems to be a lot better behaved versus when the short distance, we get her out and she's all tangled up in that line. So I don't know what her deal is. She knows where she's going, I guess. But again, she gets a happy little break from her baby, and soon to be 2 babies. So the next bird that we're going to bring out, yes, I say bird because you know WRC, we deal a lot with birds of prey. This next one technically is not a bird of prey because he doesn't go after live food. That might be a big hint what he is. So he's pretty large as well. Weight-wise, he's pretty close to Wapika. He's still in the 3-pound range. And again, even though he's huge, again, they want to be nice and light, so they are 3 pounds, but again, holding it on your hand get pretty heavy. That's why we have the little cheat stand over here. She's going to get him out, and he kind of has a cool story too because he came to the center on his own. So no one brought him into us. And I'll tell you why that's probably not a complete coincidence. Most birds of prey, like we talked about with the owls, their hearing is more important than their eyesight. With hawks, their eyesight is the most important. And with this next one, being that he's going to go after dead things that aren't alive, he's a scavenger, his eyesight's not going to be super important. I mean, he needs to be able to see, right? But he doesn't have to look for something scurrying around. But he actually has a sense of smell. Okay, where other birds of prey do not have a sense of smell. So the hawk, the owl, they can't smell anything. In fact, there's a great horned owl, which is another common owl around here. They'll eat skunks because the skunk has no defense against them. So again, there's always animals that eat all the different types. But he really relies on smell to find that food that's rotting. Can you guys guess what kind of bird it is? A vulture. Very good. He's very big, as you can probably hear him coming out. Especially when he hits the sun, his wings come out. So sometimes it makes it a little bit trickier getting him to the door. Oh, he put his wings down. All right, so this is Zorro, and he is indeed a turkey vulture. I'm sure you guys all seen these guys, right? Yeah, so these are even more commonly seen than the red-tailed hawks. The reason why they're more commonly seen, too, is because you usually will see more than one of them. You can see them by themselves, but these, unlike the other birds that we saw, are kind of, well, Tara the burrowing owl, those guys are a community bird. He is also a community bird, so that's why you see them in larger numbers. The reason, again, we have him, why he even came to our center to begin with, is we did get a phone call that there was a young vulture. Oh, he's going to go to the bathroom. Oh, good, he didn't. Just don't hit me. So we got a phone call about a young vulture that was found on the side of the road down by our center. A lot of times normally we don't necessarily go out to animal calls unless there's somebody there with them, because the problem is people just call us and say, oh, there's a bird over here that can't fly. By the time we get there, where'd the bird go? Because even though birds can't fly, they can still move around and hide because they want to try to hide as best as they can. But because he was so close, we did go out and try to find this young bird that was hit by a car. Could not find him. So we had to give up, go back to the center. It was about a week later, a young vulture came walking down the driveway of WRC. Now, the reason why he did that is because we had other vultures in care at the time. So we're feeding dead animals out to them, and he probably smelt that food, and being he can't fly to other sources, he probably was following his nose. So we actually coaxed him into an enclosure, and our vet worked with him to try to fix his wing. Unfortunately, it did not work. So when you see him open his wings, you might see the one wing shoot straight up in the air. It's the left wing, the one that's injured. You can kind of see it kind of drapes down. So unfortunately, he cannot fly anymore. And again, if you see vultures, they pretty much spend a lot of their time kind of flying around up in the sky, right? So they really need to be able to fly. You see them kind of circling around. Usually, a lot of times, if they find some food, they don't have the sharp beak or sharp talons like other birds of prey, like the hawk that we saw and those owls. So they actually, even though I don't recommend getting bit by one, he likes to bite fingers. So if you get your fingers over there, you can feel what it feels like. Just kidding. Just kidding about sticking your fingers out. I don't recommend that, but no, it does hurt. But he's not going to do the same damage as like a hawk or an owl. And even those guys, it's the talons that are more important. That's their first line of defense, but after flying. So these guys have to wait for their food to ripen up to kind of before they can come in to go and eat. They don't have that pulling mechanism with their feet or anything. If you notice, his feet are more flat. They're more designed for walking because they do walk a lot on the ground, kind of moving around, finding their food over there. So if you ever did come across a vulture that wasn't able to fly away, be warned, their self-defense is to vomit. Okay? Now, you sound like that doesn't sound like a good defense. Oh, trust me, it is very a good defense. Again, these guys are eating gross, rotting, bacteria-ridden, could have diseases food, right? And so if they get spooked, that is going to come right out into whatever spooking their's face, right? And that will deter me. Trust me. I have a story, because again, we do get these guys that come in rehab. Obviously, it's a very stressful situation for them. So we got to be very careful when we feed them versus when we can handle them to examine or give medication. I was a lucky one that got to hold one vulture one time while we were doing an exam, and of course, he did exactly what we thought he was going to do. He threw up. Of course, I wore a trash bag to make sure I didn't get anything on me, because once that gets on you, I don't care how many times you scrub and wash that off, that smells, and it smells for quite a while. But of course, this vulture decided to shake his head, and so a piece of that vomit went right up into my nose. And I am holding it with gloves, everything over it. Luckily, I had somebody there that was such a good friend to me. They'd help me pick my nose for me. So that's a true friendship right there. Save me from, and I smelt that vulture vomit for, I don't know, like a month. Like it was just embedded in there. It's pretty gross. So don't get vomited on. If you take anything away from today, don't get vomited on by a turkey vulture. Speaking of nose, if you notice something that looks very strange, very different with him versus the other birds, you can see straight through his nair, his nostril. Okay? And there is a purpose. These guys are perfectly designed for eating carrion, eating dead things. Okay? The reason why that hole goes all the way through is because if he has his head down in that carcass and he gets meat or gunk stuck in it, it's just going to pop out the other side. Okay? So again, so he can still be able to eat and everything and not pass out from not being able to breathe. Also, you'll notice on these guys is they have no feathers on their head. And that's a very important reason, because again, putting their head in that carcass, they don't want all that meat and gunk stuck on their feathers. That would just make a big gooey mess. So it's a lot easier to keep clean. You'll also see these vultures a lot of times sitting out in the sun with their wings out. Like I mentioned, when the sun hits them, those wings straight go out. And there's a purpose. One, the sun kind of helps them digest their food, but also the UV rays too help kill any bacteria they might got on their feathers and everything for them. And you wonder, being that they eat all that gross stuff that might have died and stuff, you'd think they would be an animal that got sick a lot. Well, again, because they are a scavenger, they're designed for eating that stuff. They do have a stronger stomach acid, which is, again, why you don't want them vomiting on you, which helps them kill a lot of the stuff that would make us sick. So these guys help stop the spread of disease. That's why these guys are so important to have around. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably familiar with California condors, right? So they're in the same family as these guys. There's just a lot less of them around, but they also have a similar job of cleaning up our environment. Luckily in California, they have put a ban on lead bullets, because before, I think you can still use them, but you can't buy them. So until they kind of run out of the supply, they are still out there. Because we have actually gotten in a few vultures that have had lead poisoning. Because what happens if people are out hunting, they might shoot an animal who gets the lead embedded into them, and they might die where the hunter can't find it. And these guys, of course, they're going to find it, and they can ingest it and get some of that lead inside of them. Also, the lead can leach into our waterways as well. So that's why, luckily, they have a ban on it to kind of help preserve, our wildlife and our environment. That's what also really happened with those condors, why their numbers dropped down so much. But usually, a lot of times, too, when we get these wild animals in, it's really hard to know exactly what's going on with them because they can't talk to us. And I swear, everything has the same symptoms, kind of like within people, right? Like, it could be this, it could be that. They all have the same symptoms. But there is a test that you can test their blood to see the levels, if there's any the metal poisoning kind of inside of them. Luckily, we haven't gotten in one in a while that had the lead poisoning, but a few have come through our center. Now the biggest problem is rodenticide poisoning. Because again, we put poison out because we get so frustrated with those rats and mice and gophers, they're so close to our house, we put those poisons out and it poisons the whole environment. I mean, that's what this guy eats, dead things, right? So you do your job, you killed what you wanted to kill, but then he'll go and eat that, and he ingests that toxins as well, along with other animals. Even people's cats and dogs come across that poison. So that's kind of the next step to kind of come up with a better solution than putting the poisons out into our environment. Luckily, there's a group called RATS, Raptors Are the Solution, and they actually came up with rodent birth control. That sounds kind of silly, but it's actually one dose lasts for 30 days. But again, they can eat as much as they want, but it prevents them from reproducing, which in turn brings down that population. There was a lot of studies done on it. They couldn't see any secondary effects in the animals that ate a mouse that had that. So that's something to look into. I think it just recently came to market. It was a long time in making, but again, there are solutions out there that are much better than putting poisons out. Even insecticide poisoning for insects, that's by spraying your yards or those fields, you're also affecting the wildlife. I know the falcons, a lot of the birds of prey were really affected back in the 70s, right? DDT, with putting the insecticides out there. We do get songbirds and some corvids, some jays, that come into our center that show signs of insecticide poisoning. Because again, people spray for bugs, and those animals might eat the bugs, and again, they get poisoned. Oh, that's another fascinating fact about vultures. They're such a unique bird that, unlike most birds, when they go to the bathroom, you usually see a white part with a dark brown or green center. That's the urates and nitrates, right? Well, these guys can actually separate the urates and nitrates, so they can basically separate their urine from fecal matter. So on hot days to cool off, they will purposely urinate on their own legs, and again, helps them keep cool. And also, supposedly, it doesn't make sense to me, but supposedly has some antibacterial, effects to it too. I don't know, it's still pretty gross. But that's why it might be hard to see on him, but his legs look a little pale. You can kind of see almost like around like some of the skin. It looks very white around there. You're just looking at his pee. So these guys, again, are very fascinating. They're gross creatures, but very fascinating. That's why, again, we like them out there. They don't make good pets. Again, vomiting, going to the bathroom a lot, all that fun stuff. But again, these guys, again, do live in those big family groups. When we get them in, so with Zorro here, he has wild buddies. So even though he can't fly, when we have space in our big aviary, we'll put him in there. That's because it gets more sunlight. Like I mentioned, these guys love sun. That's why he loves going on his walks, because we can go stand out in the sun with him. He loves that. Our center is up in the hills with lots of trees, so there's a lot of shade. So it's a reward to him for that sun. So when he gets in the big flight aviary, all the wild vultures, you can see all perching up on the enclosure. They're probably like, hey, buddy, give us some of that food. They don't understand why he doesn't share. So he does get to interact with the wild ones through that way. WRC is located on a very small property, and we were only temporarily supposed to be there since '98, and we are still there. We are actually looking at the end of this year, beginning of next year. We're working with the park system for some property up in San Martin area, Gilroy technically, up by Harvey Bear. And so at a new center, we could be open to the public, and being open to the public, we can take in more species of animals for education. Because like I mentioned, these guys don't belong to us. They have to come out to programs and stuff for the public to see so many times a year. When you're open to the public, you can justify having, we can have a buddy for him, so he can have multiple ones. Because it's really hard to have 2 turkey vultures and try to, bring them out to different programs. So that will be a good enrichment for him. But for now, he gets the wild guys. So again, we try to give them the best life that we can. Obviously, back in the wild where they can make their own decisions and everything is ideal. But again, being that he can't fly, he would not be able to go back there. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that this all works out and we get a new center. And then we would be open to the public, so people could actually come down. They can see all of our educational animals. And our rehab part would be a little separate, because that's the problem where we are now. We're on small property. We're not handicapped accessible, which is a requirement to be open to the public. Also, because we deal with a lot of wild animals that we're trying to get back out into the wild, if we had a lot of people coming to our center to come look at them, that just, one, can stress them out a lot, right? Or it could also get them too used to having people around. So at a new center, we'd be able to separate that. So again, people can come out to see all of our animals. And we are working on taking more species, because like I mentioned, we particularly do birds, lots of birds. But this last year is the first year that we started taking on squirrels. We're taking them a little bit limited number because we're still getting used to how to care for them, because baby squirrels take a lot of work. We normally take in baby opossums, which are, to me, a lot easier to take care of, because opossums, those guys don't get fed with bottles. They have a tube down into their stomach, because that's how they would feed from mom. They actually latch on in there. So to me, it's a lot easier than having to wait for them to drink from a bottle. But again, we're expanding. We're trying to grow, be able to take more species, but we are selective because right now, because again, the space and the type of enclosures that we do have. Does anybody have any questions? WRC is run through donations. We're donation based. We don't get money, funding from the state or anything. Sometimes we do get grants from different companies and stuff, especially to go out to schools to do educational programs, and some other organizations for grants for helping build enclosures. At the Wildlife Center, because we were only temporarily there, our enclosures aren't most state of the art, because again, they were just kind of thrown together just so we were able to move. We actually are starting to get nicer pre-fabbed enclosures for these guys, because you can take them down and move them, unlike our old types of enclosures. So with this new site, hopefully, we'll welcome you guys out there. You guys can come take a look at, all the native animals that we have there. Yes. Oh, microphone.
First of all, great presentation. Thank you so much. I learned a lot. I'm originally from Japan, Tokyo, and then DC, the last three or 4 years, there are Owl's Cafe opened in Tokyo. It's just
I've heard of cat cafes. I never heard of an owl cafe.
Owl's Cafe, where you get the drink for $10, and then you can just pet owls and stuff. But what's your thoughts on this? It's maybe it's anti-preservation and kind of.
Yeah. So again, everybody has different opinions. So in a lot of other countries, there are I know UK is a big one, where you'll see a lot of these YouTube videos coming out with people with pet owls and petting them. Obviously we're not a fan of it, because again, these guys should be wild. They have not been domesticated, but when people see them touching them and everything like that, it makes it like, oh, I can have them as a pet. And they're like, oh, that'd be a great pet. They don't realize all the bad stuff, why they don't make the good pet, right? And then they might end up with one and they realize this isn't what I signed up for. So again, we're not a fan of presenting them like pets. That's why we try to keep them as wild as possible. They do used to being out in front of people, because it wouldn't be fair to bring an animal out that just was really uncomfortable. So that's pretty much as we do for them. If we were to pet him, like I said, he'd bite your fingers. No hesitation, even if you just get close enough. It's fun when I have to get him, because they don't have those everything on his legs. We only put that on so we can bring him out in a safe way. So a lot of times when I have to go and get him in there, I'll sometimes have to bring an extra glove. He was really good this morning, and I have to cover my hand up so I can get my hand to kind of put all that stuff on him without him tasting my fingers. And he's not necessarily doing it because he doesn't like me or anything. He's just like, oh, this is these guys are very intelligent birds. They're very smart. We do kind of try to put some puzzle, keep his mind active and stuff in his enclosure. We used to stash his food in little balls and stuff that he had to figure out how to get out. The problem was, a lot of times the volunteers wouldn't notice they were in there, and it would get very stinky. So as far as we try not to make them look like pets. Yes, there are people who do keep these wild animals as pets, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. And by showing people petting them why it's a really bad idea to pet animals, especially wild or animals that would live outside, is these guys do have oils on their feathers, and when we're touching and petting, we're stripping those oils off, and we're putting our oils, our bacteria and stuff on, so it breaks it down so they're not as weatherproof as they would be. So that's more important if they're outside. Like our animals, these guys do live outside. They're not in our house. A lot of times people have pet birds and they keep them inside, so touching them, petting them isn't going to be as life-threatening as it would be for an animal that lives outside. It's also not a very good idea too, because us petting them gives them in their, depending on the species of bird, like again, I'm talking parrot-wise, a lot of times you have to be careful while even petting parrots. You can actually, they can actually start mistaking you as their mate. And that causes a lot of behavioral problems and causes people to get bit and frustration because you're not fulfilling your duties. So I hope you're not anyway. So that's another thing to think about. Again, I know that's true in parrots. I don't know if that carries over to other bird species, but that's still another thing why it's not a good idea to pet, animals. They weren't domesticated like our cats and dogs that we're, used to petting. So don't pet birds. Just remember that. Be careful where you pet them, I should say. All right, yes. Oh, microphone.
So if I were to find an injured bird in my vicinity, could I take it over to, there's a wildlife or over Penitentiary Creek in San Jose. Are you affiliated with them? Could we drop it off there and they'd get it to you? Or?
So how it works, so Silicon Valley Wildlife Center, they're a separate wildlife center for us. Are we connected? Yes, all wildlife centers are connected in some way. So like a lot of times if they get an animal in, they don't have the big flight aviaries, so sometimes they will bring, it gets transferred to our center. If we get animals in that they're better suited for, because again, we mostly do the birds, sometimes people have raccoons, things like that, we'll either direct the person to bring them up to Silicon Valley or have someone transported up there. So they give us a lot of times, because they don't have educational animals, they only do rehabilitation right now. They used to do education, but that's not where the money, or the money is in education. Rehab takes money away, but they got a big grant money that said if you just do the education or the rehab, they got more funding that way. So they had to. So now we're the only ones with the education. So we have these birds that can be surrogate parents. So they don't have that. So what they do, actually, quite a few of the great horned owls that we have came through them. So they'll get them in, we get transferred down so we can put them with our educational animals. That makes sense. So yes, we're connected. Being up in this area, that is a closer wildlife center. So you can call us, you can call them. We're going to direct you whoever's closer. So it's not a competition who gets what animals or anything like that. We want the animals to get the best care. They are larger. Like I said, they do get a lot more funding. They get funding through the state, so they're required to take everything in, which is why we couldn't get funding from the state, because we just don't have the facility and the types of enclosures and everything for that. We're hoping that changes, but for right now, we don't have that. And also you have to gain the knowledge on how to care for these animals. So they have that, and they take in coyotes, everything. So again, that's why we transfer things that we don't take, and then we take things to kind of help them out. So in those ways, we are connected. Hopefully I answered your question. I mumble a lot. I'm sorry. Any other questions you guys might have?
You mentioned a couple of times don't get too close to these birds, and are there any reason behind it?
Yeah. So why you don't want to get very close to wildlife, not because they're going to hurt you or anything like that, but again, we kind of want to observe them from a distance because we want them to kind of go about their daily life as if we didn't exist, right? So when we do get too close, because a lot of times with people, it's harder to see in birds. It's more possible like mammals. A lot of times people want, or I guess ducks and geese are another common one. People want to help. So their version of helping is, I'm going to go and feed you, right? So you're putting food out. One, it might not be appropriate diet for these animals. Two, it gets them very dependent on humans. So again, if of us being around getting too close, we're just kind of showing that humans shouldn't be feared. And so, especially the young, they'll get so used to people that they might get too close to the wrong person type of thing. So that's more the dangers of it. It's more for the animal. Like the burrowing owls, right? If they have a lot of people around and they get really used to it, they can come get too close, and like I said, they can get hurt and can cause problems. But it's also, again, you don't want to kind of distract them from paying attention to other predators around for them to kind of come in. Hopefully that kind of answered it. It's a safety measure. Just, you can be like, I'm not saying you can't like go and look at it. If you're standing here and an animal comes walking near you, you don't have to run away the other direction. But again, also not spooking or scaring them, because even sometimes when they have babies, sometimes the animals will try to drag you away from the area, look like they're injured. Like killdeers are a very common one. You have those guys out here. They'll actually drag their wings to drag you away from their nest. So again, because that's Shoreline, they're dragging you away from the nest, it makes it the nest very vulnerable to something else coming in before she can get back. So the longer we stay there, the longer the mom's away. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, the reason I was asking is we visited Galapagos a couple years ago, and I found we human actually coexist with birds in there because their natural environment was not disturbed. So if you walk up to the bird, they don't really fly away. They actually come up to you. So I'm just wondering, this is kind of evolution.
Yeah, because in the Galapagos too, there's not very, it's more of the tourists and stuff coming in, and then the feeding. So that's a more isolated area, so it's not as detrimental. But like here, there's a lot more predators going around, and there's a lot more people. So that means they're going to come into conflict with a lot of different variety of people. They can come across the wrong person. But those animals, there is a place we released a hawk at down. It's down south a little bit further, San Bernardino. That's not the one in Southern California. I always get them mixed up, the county. But I went there and I was surprised. We had baby rabbits coming and hopping up to people. And I'm like, what? The ranger, I was like, what is going on? Because rabbits are, fearful of everything. They need to be. But it's because so little people go there that they don't know what a person is. And so they're curious and kind of check into. So again, that could be a bad thing. So again, those islands, a lot of tourists and stuff like that. In general, it might not be bad as long as the wrong person doesn't come across to kind of harm them, right? But it's best to keep them wild.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions? If there's no more questions, I want to thank you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoyed meeting these animals. And when you guys go outside, keep an eye out. You might, again, see everything we brought, you will find right here. So thank you guys.
All right, thank you, everybody. So if we could have one more round of applause for Phil and for our representatives from work. Thank you so much. The video of today will be on the Shoreline webpage, mountainview.gov/shoreline. Once it's done editing, we're going to try to add in some cool extra habitat shots and stuff, so it might take a little longer to produce. Sorry, Fabian. But we're hopefully going to make that happen, and then that'll be up there. You can also see the first speaker presentation about the history of Shoreline, landfill, and the infrastructure. That's currently up on the webpage now. It's also on the city's YouTube channel and on KMVT's YouTube channel. I wanted to remind everybody that we do have our third installment of the speaker series, August 27th. That is going to be a tour of the sea level rise out around Coast Casey and out by the bay. Because it's a tour and it's on the trail, we're very limited in number for that one. So please sign up early if you are interested, but please don't sign up if you don't think you can make it just to hold a spot. We have to do that in order to limit the number of people on the trail so that we don't cause any safety issues while we're out walking around. That will also be filmed though, so if you can't make it, no worries. It will be available like the other ones in our series. And then lastly, as I stated earlier, our fourth speaker series, the last installment, the culmination, will be on October 15th. That will be here again at Michael's. We're going to have a panel, and we're going to kind of do a whole recap, past, present, future. We got a lot of cool members of the community that will be there, organizations having to do with sea level rise and habitat conservation and all of that, along with some former staff that can kind of tell you some of the stories behind how Shoreline was built, the movies that the sailing lake has been in, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So with that, I also wanted to do a quick plug. The Sailing Lake Bistro over on the Sailing Lake is actually selling Burrowing Owl cookies today, and a percentage of the proceeds will be going to, I believe, Audubon. And so if you have a chance to walk over there and get a Burrowing Owl cookie, they're pretty cool and pretty unique. We plan on having them on sale a couple times this year in honor of the 40th. And so thank you to the Sailing Lake and Silicon Shores for that. And so with that, we're going to be packing up. If you have any questions, you can go check out, again, the Shoreline webpage, mountainview.gov/shoreline. And you can also come talk to us afterwards. We'll be around for a few minutes, the city staff. And thank you all for coming here today. It's been a pleasure.